Hi everyone, good morning. How are you? We'll wait for another couple of minutes. I'm not sure why people have not joined yet. I'll ask everyone to join on time from tomorrow. It becomes difficult if we start on time. So let's see. Otherwise, we'll start in a couple of minutes.
Hey Prakash, this is Gaurav. Uh,
Yes, sir. Yes.
I don't have the recordings, so I just dropped a message. Have the recording for the last session. So, is there any classroom created? Can we get added to that for the recordings?
Let me check. Let me check online. I'll get back to you. There should be a classroom created. They would have created the classroom. I'll get back to you. I'll check and get back to you by tomorrow on this. But there should be a classroom. Can anyone I'm not sure if you're added to the classroom, but if anyone else can comment if they were added and if you can see the links, the recording links on the classroom. Is the classroom already created for all of you?
Yeah, classroom was created right after the first class itself. We were
I
all added. I'm not sure Saurabh has given his has filled that Gmail or Google form.
Yeah, I did that. I did that already.
okay.
Okay.
I'll have to check with the Learn by support team. I'll get back to you. I'll check with them and get back to you. Okay. Just mention it on the group and tag Aditya if you can do that,
Sure, sure.
or I'll do that. No worries. Okay. I think we what did we discuss in the last session? And I think there was one topic which was pending, right? Uh, from the theoretical perspective, and then the plan was to start with some of the questions, the design questions today. So, can anyone tell me what was the topic which was remaining? I think it was a very small topic. I don't remember.
We
Uh,
started after consistent hashing. Now we are supposed to discuss the modified version of that.
oh, modified consistent hashing was something which was pending, right? That's the only thing which was pending, correct? Okay,
Yes.
sounds good to me. Let me open the Miro board, the one which we use every time for the practice. I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So last time we talked about consistent hashing. So consistent hashing is a solution to a normal hashing strategy which we read earlier, where there were some number of shards, and to find in which particular shard the value will go, we do key percent the number of machines, and we used to get a value. But the problem was with the above approach was that if you are adding another machine, you have to redistribute the complete data. So to figure out a solution for the same, we actually worked on the consistent hashing, where you're taking a hash function of 2 to the power 32, a big hash function, and the user IDs were generated randomly from 0 to 2 to the power 64. And whenever you get a random value between 0 to 2 to the power 64, we used to take a hash of it with 2 to the power 32, and we used to put it in the either, depending on which particular range it is falling, we used to put it in the different machines. Initially we started with, like, here we have 4 different machines. So all the values from 0 to 2 to the power 8 will go into the machine number 1. All the values from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 16 will go into the machine number 2. All the values from 2 to the power 16 to 2 to the power 32 will go into the machine number 3. And sorry, 2 to the power 24 will go into the machine number 3, and 2 to the power 32 to 24 to 2 to the power 32 will go into the machine number 4. That's what we discussed. And how it helps, because let's say if tomorrow you want to scale it more, you have machine number 1, machine number 2, and if you see that there is a lot of load on machine number 2, then you can redistribute the load on machine number 2 by introducing another machine which is in the here machine number 5, and you say that all the data from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 12 will go into the machine number 5, and all the data from 2 to the power 12 to 2 to the power 16 will go into machine number 2. So basically the load has been reduced from machine number 5 to machine number 2. So that's what we discussed about the consistent hashing in the last session. Before I move on to the modified consistent hashing, are there any questions or confusion here? Any questions at all? Okay. Considering there are no further questions on this, now we'll try to understand modified consistent hashing. So what is modified consistent hashing? Let's try to see. Just give me a second. So here we can see it. There are some disadvantages. What are the disadvantages? So there can be a lot of load on one particular shard because of the way we have kept our shard in the ring based on the hash ID. So it could be possible that because a lot of values are falling between 0 to 2 to the power 8, and there is a lot of load on this particular machine. So that is one fault. The another disadvantage is if one of the complete shard goes down. If this shard goes down, then there won't be any response from these machines at all. So because we are not replicating the data across shard, we are dependent on one particular shard to actually return all the data. Now to actually to come up with a better solution to not be dependent on a one single shard, we introduce a modified consistent hashing. So there are two problems. Let's talk about the problems. One is the distribution of the load. So the first problem is, I would say, it's not a problem, but I mean we can improve the current solution. So I'll say disadvantages. What is the first one? The first one is distribution of load can be uneven. And one of the machines or one of the shard might get overloaded with the data and the requests. This is the first issue. What is the second issue? Here we talked about the distribution. The second is if one of the shard goes down, then there is no way for you to return the response for set of users unless the shard is up and running again. Just a second, I'm so sorry. So you can clearly see two problems with the current approach. Okay. So we need to figure out what is the solution, what are the solutions for the current approach which you have taken. So now we'll be working on the solutions of the problem which we have just figured out. So unless the shard is up and running again. Now to solve the current problems, what we do is we still have we still create a ring. So now we have we had four different shards, and we bring, let's say we have 5 replications. So we bring 3 of the replications in the ring and keep 2 out of the ring. Try to see what I'm doing. Or let's say we bring 2 in the ring and keep 3 outside the ring. So we have total now 8 number of shards. In a way, we have 8 machines present in the ring, not 8 number of shards are still 4, but we can say we have 8 machines in the ring. So what we are saying, this is my machine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's give some numbers to these machines randomly. Let's say this is 1, this is 2, this is 4, this is 3, this is 1, this is 4, this is 2, and this is 3. Now what we are saying is, instead of having the numbers from all 0 to 2 to the power 8 in machine number 1 or machine number 2, now we'll redistribute. So we say that 0 to 2 to the power 4 is in machine number 2. And 2 to the power 4 to 2 to the power 8 is here. And 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 12 is here. And 12 to 16 is here. 16 to 20 is here. 20 to 24 is here. 24 to 28 is here. And 28 to 32 is here. So in machine number 1, we have 2 range of data. In machine number 1, we have 28 to 32, 2 to the 28 to 2 to the 32, and we have 2 to the 12 to 2 to the 16. In machine number 2, we have the data ranging from 0 to 2 to the power 4 and 2 to the 22, 2 to the power 24. Similarly, in machine number 3, we have data ranging from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 12 and 2 to the 24 to 2 to the power 28. Sorry, this is 20 to 24, right? Yeah, correct. And machine number 4, you have data from 16 to 20 and 4 to 8. So now what was happening? Earlier we had 0 to 2 to the power 4 and 2 to the power 8 in one machine. We have redistributed this data in a better way. Now let's say tomorrow you can see that there is a lot of load on one of these machines. Let's say there is a lot of load on machine number 3, for example. So let's change the color. Let's say that there is a lot of on machine number 3. So you'll have to redistribute. So you will introduce another machine. Before machine number 3, let's say you introduce a machine here. This is a machine number 5, and you say that the distribution of the data here will be from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 10, and here it will be from 2 to the power 10 to 2 to the power 12 now. and you must introduce another machine number 5 somewhere in the ring, which you know that also getting more, you know, there is a load on that particular machine as well. So let's say there is a load on machine number 1 as well. So you introduce machine number 5 here. So some data, some load is shared from here, this shard as well as this shard to some other shard. Now, if there, sorry, let's say there is a load on machine number 2 as well. So now the 0 to 2 to the power 2 will be in this machine, and 2 to the power 2, 2 to the power 4 is to this machine. So it distributes the data in a better way now. And we know that, you know, there are 2 present in the ring, and then there will be 3 machines present outside the ring. It's just that they are not participating to decide the range in the ring, but they also, all the 5 machines will contain the exact same data. So this helps us to distribute the data in a better way. And if there is another machine introduced, then the load is not shared just between 2 machines. Load is not just shared for a particular machine, but for multiple machines in the new machines. Correct? And you can keep, again, you'll have to maintain this mapping, and you have to modify these mappings whenever you introduce a new machine. But this is like your lookup service, which you can easily modify. Now, so we have solved for the first problem. The second problem was, if one of the shard goes down, then what happens? So basically, to actually handle that, what we say is, we will always keep the data in 2 shards. Let's say if you're storing the data from 0 to 2 to the power 4 in machine number 2, we'll store the data, same data of 0 to 2 to the power 4 in the next shard, which is appearing after machine number 2. So we store the same data in machine number 2 and machine number 4. Similarly, all the data which is going in machine number 4 will also be stored in machine number 3. And same goes here, 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 here. Now, the second thing which I have mentioned is not necessarily to be done. It's done only when you really want to copy the data across multiple shards and make sure that if one of the shard goes down, then you should be able to retrieve the data. But the other solution to those problems is that you don't shard. Generally, the complete shard will go down if it is present in one geographical region itself, and there is some natural calamity or disaster in that particular region. So then only the complete shard will go down. So to make sure that you don't end up, you know, it doesn't happen that the complete shard goes down, you actually replicate the data across multiple data servers, across multiple geographical regions, just to make sure that there is no data loss, and you can return the response even if one of the machine in that particular geographical region goes down. And what you can say is, the shards which I've created, or the replications which I've created in other geographical regions, these are used as backups only. These are not the prominent ones on which you will receive like a lot of requests and return the response. These machines shall receive the request only in case if the machines present in the current shard in the current geographical regions have went down. So these are the solutions to the above 2 problems. I prefer to talk about the first one only generally in the interview, unless my interviewer doesn't push me to actually talk about the modified consistent hashing. First one is simple, easy to handle, and actually solve most of the purposes. You really don't go and apply the second one unless there is a need for it. The distributed cache which we have generally created do use modified consistent hashing because they don't know what will be the requirement of the client, and just to make sure that they provide the best solution, they end up giving a solution of modified consistent hashing. But in general, unless you don't have a very strong use case to use modified consistent hashing, you can stick to consistent hashing. That is good enough for a particular problem's solution. Right? Whenever you have to do partitioning by hash, horizontal partitioning or sharding by hash, you should prefer consistent hashing during the interview, and generally in the company as well, unless you don't see a very strong requirement to go ahead and use the modified consistent hashing, because the mappings of course become much more complex in case of modified consistent hashing. So this is about the consistent hashing and modified consistent hashing. I'll stop here for a couple of minutes. I would request everyone to understand, think about it once. And if you have any questions, please do ask questions. If there are no further questions, then we will start with Twitter design now. Also have a humble request to everyone. please join on time from tomorrow. We'll start the class by 8:20. So make sure that you join the meeting by 8:20. If you want, we can start by 8:25, but there should be a common, uh, you know, like we all of us should be aligned on that. But I would request you to join by 8:25, 8:20 at max, and we'll start the session by 8:20. And before that, if there are any questions, I can take those questions in the first 5 minutes. So this is about the modified consistent hashing. Please go through this once again in a minute or so, and then we'll start with a new question, which is a Twitter design. Now we'll start the actual implementation, and now these are very important because I'll start covering each of these topics, the questions which are important from the interview perspective, in detail in the potential question which can be asked in the interview, and how to use these concepts in those design questions. So giving you a minute, go through it. If you have any questions, confusion, I hope everyone has a link to the Miro board, so you can just go and check the link, and yeah, feel free to ask questions if you have.
Prakhar, I have one question.
Yeah, tell me.
So if you introduce new machine into the ring, so this new machine will be distributed across, like between 1 and 2, like between 4 and 3. It will be available some like across all the ring, right?
Not all the range. It can be anywhere. You can put it anywhere, but don't try to put it before 3 in the other. Like it's a big ring, right? So you can put it anywhere, but like if you know that there's a lot of load on 3 and already we have put one of the logical map rings before 3, then try to put it somewhere in the ring which is again or a bit heavily loaded, so that you can redistribute the load.
Okay. So data share is still same. Well, means
Data is still same. It's just that you are redistributing the data in a better way. The data between both the machine number 5 will remain same. This machine is also containing the data from 0 to 2 to the power 2 and 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 10. And this machine is also containing the data for 0 to 2 to the power 2 and 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 10.
Okay, so whatever the data was there for machine 2, it's same data will contain for machine 5 also.
Not machine 2. I mean, you will now redistribute the data which was present in machine 2, right? So you have the data from 0 to 2 to the power 4. So you will shift the data from 0 to 2 to the power 2 in machine number 5. And 2 to the power 2 to 2 to the power 4 will remain in machine number 2. And also you will share the data from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 10 in machine number 5. And only 2 to the power 10 to 2 to the power 12 will remain in machine number 3. So you're redistributing the data.
Yeah, so total data share is still 2 into 2 to the power 4. 2 raised to 2 is into 10 raised to power 2, like this. So data share is same. Like if we are introducing new machine in previous approach, so data share is still same. Means total data share. Like 2 times we are sharing the data.
I didn't get your question.
Like in previous approach, total amount of data that was getting shared into the new machine is still same.
What is total amount of data getting shared into?
Like previously, if you're introducing new machine, so whatever the data that was before the partition, it was getting shared into the new machine. Now, now what is happening is that if you're introducing new machine, then half of the data is shared at one place and half of the data is shared at other place. So
yes.
So total amount of data that is getting shared into the new machine is still same as the previous approach.
You can change it. You can change the strategy if you want to. Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Here it was from 2 to the 8 to 2 to the 12. So it depends on how do you want to share it, right? All these machines are also containing, see, this is also containing 4 unit of data, right?
Yeah.
So the units are still 4. I'm not saying that has changed. That was never the purpose, right? Here also the 8 units of data was there. And when you are redistributing, the 4 units are distributed. Now, still we have 8 units only. In machine number 3, you have 8 unit of data from 2, or basically I should not say 8 unit, but the range is still for 2 to the power 8 number of keys which are generated. So it's still the case was same. It's just that now you have distributed that into 2 different ranges. That's the only difference. So the amount of data stored in the previous case and this case should be same, right? Because the amount of data is not changing, and the number of machines are also, number of shards are also same. That is not changing. So distribution will remain in the same way. It's just that it's a better distribution of the data.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Prakhar, one quick question on the ring part, right? So you said there are 2 machines in the ring and 3 machines out of the ring, right? So what is like the meaning of that?
It means that this is just a logical mapping, right? So understand, we are creating the ring. We have the data present in this and this. It means that we are not putting all the 5 machines here in the shard and distributing the data. Just putting these 2 machines somewhere in the logical mapping. Physically, these are 5 machines put it like present together, right? These are like 5 different machines. It's just that to understand where exactly, like from which range to which range the data is going, we are putting those machines in the ring. If I introduce another one 5 here, like we can say that that data is also present, 2 to the 22 to 2 to the 22 is also present in machine number 5. But we don't want to do that. It's just a logical mapping. It's just a diagram which I'm trying to draw, nothing else. So when you're drawing a ring, you have to put, let's say if you have 5 replications, you are not putting all the 5 replications in the ring. You're just putting 2 of those replications in the ring and then distributing the data. That's it. It's a logical mapping. Physically, nothing is changing. It's exactly same. Understood?
Okay. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Prakhar, how did you come up with that sequence 1, 2, 4, 3 and
randomly?
1, 4, 2, 3. Oh, it's just a random one?
It's a random one. Just try to ensure that, just make sure that you don't put like the same machines after one another. Like you don't put 2 after 1 here as well. That's it. Don't put 4. So here 2 was present after 4. Here 4 is present after 2. Correct. And here 4 is present after 3. Here after 3, 1 is present. So it just gives you better distribution of the data. That's why just try not to put the same machines one after the other.
So essentially, instead of putting the contiguous values in between 2 shards, we are splitting that into 2 halves, right?
Randomly, yeah, putting the values randomly. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I still didn't get how are we still able to get the data even one of the machine goes down?
So what I was saying was, if not the machine goes down, if the complete shard goes down, like say if you have shard number 5, that complete shard goes down, then what I'm saying is, when you're storing the data in shard number 5, in a way you also create a replication in shard number 2 as well for the same data. So the same data is present across 2 shards.
Yeah.
The 0 to 2 to the power 2 is present here, and you can do it in 3 machines as well. So present across 3 shards. It's just that you're copying the same data across 3 shards. So again, there will be consequences of that. Like you'll end up using more storage. The other solution to actually handle that kind of, problem is that you put your machines in different geographical regions, so that at least if one of the machine goes down, the complete shard doesn't goes down. Understood?
So every time when we introduce a new shard, we are just copying the data, not moving the data completely, right?
No, we will move the data. We'll move the data from 2 to the power 8 to 2 to the power 10 here, and we'll have only 2 to the power 10 to 12, 2 to the power 12 here. But yes, you are saying that if there is a lot of load on this, and let's say if we are moving some data, but some set of data will be moved from here to here, right? Because
Yes.
now the machine number 4 data should not be present in machine number 3 anymore. It should be in the machine number 5. That data should be moved here, right? Yeah. So in a way, there will be a better distribution, and there will be some data which will be removed from machine number 3 and shifted to the machine number 5.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. So this is about the modified consistent hashing. Now we'll talk about the Twitter design. So let's go back to our actual doc. And now we'll practice it in a different way, a bit different way. Let me try to share my screen. So now we'll do a Twitter design. Okay. So the first thing to start any design question is to figure out what are the functional and non-functional requirements. Let's start with the functional requirements. On the functional requirements, as I mentioned, we should not spend more than functional and non-functional requirements. We should not spend more than 5 to 7 minutes. In this session, we might take a little bit longer because we'll be discussing things as well. But in the interview, you should be able to figure out these details within 5 to 7 minutes. Functional requirements, as you know, are generally given by the product manager or after doing the UX research. And in the interview, it can be given by your interviewer. And your interviewer can ask you to figure out all the functional requirements on your own as well. So let's start with some of the functional requirements of Twitter design. So what do you think? What all functional requirements should we have? So let's start with very simple requirements. User should be able to register and log in onto the platform. This is the first basic requirement. And users should be able to follow other users. What else? User should be able to register and log in onto the platform. Users should be able to follow the users. Users should be able to post a tweet. Then users should be able to react on tweets. What kind of reactions are we supporting? Let's support 2 reactions only for now. Likes and comments. And then there can be another requirement. Users feeds should be generated for the users. Can we say that right now? Let's consider. Let's keep media out of the scope for now. Out of scope for now. These are the functional requirements. Let's talk about the non-functional requirements. So what do you think? What are the different non-functional requirements in this one? So we generally, when we talk about non-functional requirements, we talk about 3 different functionality. We talk about latency, we talk about availability, we talk about consistency. Now latency, you will need latency as low as possible. Feeds should be generated or should be presented to the user almost in the real time. Availability. Okay, a question. Would you prefer availability or consistency during the partition tolerance? So we talked about CAP theorem, right? So what do you prefer, availability in this particular design or consistency?
Availability.
Why and why not consistency? Can you give me a reason?
And consistency doesn't affect much. We don't have that much critical of information being shared. So I would prefer availability over consistency in this case.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So we will say that we'll prefer availability for sure in this one. The reason is that let's say I posted a tweet, right? And you as a user can't see that tweet for let's say a couple of seconds or a second. Is that okay? Yeah, it should be okay, right? Because you are following me, but you can't see that tweet immediately as soon as I've posted. But eventually you will be able to see that post or tweet after a couple of seconds. Then you should be fine with it, right? So basically the data is present in one of the geographical region, but might not be copied to another geographical region. If you send the request, you might not get the latest data, but eventually you'll be able to see the latest data as well, the latest tweet by me as well. So here you would prefer high availability over the consistency because you don't want to write the data at the same time in all the machines, and it's okay if it takes a bit of a time to forward the data present in the current machines to the other geographical region machines. So can we say that we need high availability here? Prefer high consistency. Prefer high consistency as well. But preference, can I say preference would be given to availability over the consistency in case of partition. Any questions here, any one of you?
No.
So this is about the functional and non-functional requirements. So it should not take more than, again, as I said, 5 to 7 minutes to figure out these details. Now, after you have figured out the functional and non-functional requirements, the next important part is the estimations. Let me create some subheadings here so that it's easier for you to understand. The first thing which we did was figure out all the requirements. And then we talked about the functional requirements. And then we talked about non-functional requirements. And then now we are talking about estimations. So what are the different estimations we need to do? So we need to do two types of estimations in any particular design. The first one is capacity estimation. And the second one is QPS estimations. Now, how do we do capacity estimations and QPS estimations? To do the capacity estimations and QPS estimations, we need to understand, first we need to understand what are the different APIs which you have in place, correct? So we'll do capacity estimations and QPS estimations. So for capacity estimations, we need to know all the tables. So before jumping onto the estimations directly, first what we can do is we can try to figure out all the tables. So we can say that now we are going into the detailed design. And let's start with all the tables which you'll need for this particular design. So let's start listing down all the tables. Let's talk about the tables. So can anyone tell me what are the different kinds of tables you'll create here? So, okay, let's do one thing. Now let's do an exercise. So I would request everyone to figure out all the tables which you'll require for this particular design. So let's start with the tables. I'll give you 5 minutes. Try to figure out all the tables, and then we'll start talking about all the tables which you'll need for this particular design. In the meantime, if any one of you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. And otherwise, you can try to figure out all the tables which you'll require based on the requirements. These are the requirements. Let me put the doc as well in the here so that in case if you want to go through the requirements, then you can go through. And based on that, you need to create all the tables. Okay, let's talk about the tables. I can see some of you have mentioned the tables. So one is the user table, tweets or user, follow table, reaction table. Very nice. This is correct. User follow, user post, likes and comments. Can we club this likes and comments? See, let's see if we can club this. Then there was Twitter info, user, follow user, tweet info. I mean, maybe you'll need a reaction table as well, Sushil. So you should have mentioned that as well. But I think, yeah, most of you have figured out the right set of tables which will require.
So you one of the table can have the reaction information like user. I thought like we can have user kind of.
I'll explain you why it is better to have a separate one. Let's
Okay.
talk about it in a while. Okay. So let's say we have tables. Now, first table is user table. For sure. So let's start with the user tables. Now, what all details should we capture in as a part of the users table? So as a part of the users table, the first thing which you'll need is user ID. This should be our primary key. Then you should have, you can have a username, password, password. How will we store the password? In the one-way hash format. Correct. We've talked about am I audible or you can't hear me? You people can't hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So in the users table, we'll capture the user ID, username, password, image URL. We can capture other things as well, like the name of the user, the age of the user, the date of birth, some basic information about the user. Then after the users table, sorry?
Email ID.
Yeah, email ID. That's very important. Correct.
Last
Email
log.
ID. And if you want to mention some of the contact details, you can do that as well. But let's put the email ID for now. These are the details which are present as a part of the users table. Sorry?
I was just mentioning about the last login also. When did the user log in last time?
You can have bunch of fields, but I mean we didn't take it as a part of the requirement, so we can skip it. But if you want, you can capture last login instead. That should be okay. Okay. So you have the users table. After that, we'll have tweets table. So let's figure out what are the important tweets on the tweets table perspective. We'll need the tweet ID for sure. After the tweet ID, what else do we need? We need
Prakhar, I think we are not able to see what you're typing actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, but I think the screen sharing has stopped. Yeah. It's stuck in one same page.
Is that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't.
Okay. Let me start. Can you see my screen now? Is it visible now? Can you see the cursor moving?
No, not yet.
Okay. Let me rejoin.
Yeah, now we are able to see Prakhar.
You can see it now, right? Okay, great. So in the tweets table, what all fields do we have? I'm assuming there is no background noise as well from my side. The voice is very clear, right?
There's a bit of background noise.
Just give me a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm assuming there is no background noise now.
Now it's better, yes.
Okay, great. So in the tweets table, what all fields do we have? We have a tweet ID, the user ID of the user who is actually posting a tweet. So let's put it as user ID.
Prakhar, what is image URL in users table?
Basically, we will have a profile image of the user, right? So instead of storing the complete bytes in the users table, what we do is we create a blob storage. We have something called blob storage. The way blob storage works is that blob storage created is present very close to the web servers, so that you don't need to send so many bytes at the database and then store all those bytes in the database, because generally the image bytes are very, images are of MBs, right? So you'll have to transfer the data over the network. So basically you keep these blob storage very close to the web servers. And what you do is, for the bytes you have the bytes of data. For those bytes, you get an image URL. You store those bytes here and you get the image URL, and you store the image URL in the actual table. And when you retrieve back the data, when you read the user's data, you know the image URL. For that particular image URL, you get the bytes, the exact bytes. Okay. It just saves you from doing a lot of network IO, in the sense that you don't need to take these bytes to the database layer and store these data into the database layer. We'll talk about some of the other use cases as well of the blob storage soon.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
So in case of tweets table, you'll have tweet ID, user ID. So user posting the tweet. What else do we need? We need the tweet content. So we'll have tweet content. Correct. What we'll have a creation timestamp, the timestamp at which the tweet was created. What other information do we want to capture as a part of the tweet? Anything else? We have tweet ID, user ID is posting the tweet. Sorry?
Location?
You can capture the locations if you want to, not necessarily required based on our requirements which you have taken. You can mention you can have some other details, like you can have hashtags and bunch of other things as a part of the tweets. But we have not considered that as a requirement, so I'm skipping that. After the tweet table, before the tweet table, let's talk about the follow table. There will be a follow table. In this follow table, what all fields will be there? So first we'll have a user ID or follower ID. This is the user ID of the follower. And followee ID is the user ID of the followee, the person who is being followed. And we can also capture the creation timestamp. Creation timestamp. Timestamp at which this relationship was created. So this is the follow table. We'll soon talk about the indexes as well on each of these tables. Then the fourth one is a reaction table. In the reaction table, we'll have what? Reaction ID, tweet ID, the tweet on which the reaction is happening, the user ID, user who is reacting on the tweet. Then we'll have reaction type, whether it's a like or a comment. It can be an enum, contains a detail about either it's a like or a comment. Then we have a reaction type. Then if it's a comment, then we'll have comment text. If it's a like, then we won't have this comment text. This is my reaction type. Creation timestamp, at what timestamp this was. These are some of the basic details which we are capturing as a part of the reaction table. Now let's try to introduce the index on each of these tables. Do we need any index on the users table? We might not require it, right? or we might, yeah, we may require it on the basis of the email ID if you want to figure out based on the email ID. If you're providing the search capability, maybe you'll have it on the basis of the username as well, but not necessarily required based on the requirements which you have taken. In the follow table, see, what will be the primary key? So in this table, this is my primary key. In the follow table, my primary key will be a composite key, right? It's a combination of two keys, the follower ID and the followee ID. Okay. This is my primary key for the follow table, correct? Now, do we need to create any index? So see, we can always get all the followee for a particular follower. So let's say if I'm following 100 people, so I can get all my followee easily with the help of the primary key, because we can do a partial indexing. We can just query based on the follower ID. But if I want to know all the followee, then there is no way unless I don't know the follower ID, because I need to introduce either both of these. I can't simply just introduce this. Correct? So I can't query just based on this. You can query, but it will do a full table scan. So to optimize the query, we'll create an index on the top of followee. Let's have an index on the top of followee ID. Is this clear to everyone? Are there any questions here?
Question about this user table.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when user is trying to log in, if we don't index this primary key or the email ID here, then it's going to literally scan through all the rows, right? So
you can. That's what I'm saying, right? Like if you need a login, something like a login, basically you can index it based on the email ID or the username.
Okay. So in general, for example, if you take any login system for Twitter or Facebook or Amazon, anything like that, are they going to cache all these usernames and put them in the cache?
So generally what you do is you create a separate table for this. You can have an account table. This is much more sophisticated way to handle this. Let's talk about this. You can have an account table, and in the account table you can have something like account ID. You have the username and you have the password, and it's a one-to-one mapping between the account and user. And you don't store these details here. Instead, you store account ID here. This is your foreign key. Now, basically, you create an index on the top of this username. Understood?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need an index here anymore. Okay.
Okay.
Now you have a follow table. You have created an index on the tweet table. What are indexes you will create? You will create an index based on the user ID, but because you might want to fetch all the tweets for a particular user, right? The user ID. On the reaction table, you can create an index based on the tweet ID for which you are getting all the reactions. So tweet ID. These are the indexes which you are creating on the top of these tables. Any questions or confusion here? Now see, once we have introduced this, because we are not considering the images here in the Twitter table, if we would have considered the images, then here also we would have got an image URL along with the tweet, and image URL will be stored in the blob store. But we are not considering that. Now let's do some estimation. So can we say that user ID, account ID, email, image URL, name, age, date of birth, along with the actual bytes of the image, right? Let's say this is around, like we're storing very small size images right now. So can we say that users table, each of the entry in the users table will take 2 KB of data? Correct. Each of the tweets will take what, around 1 KB of data. There's 1000 bytes of data. Each of the reaction follow table will take some 20-30 bytes. So let's assume that 50 bytes of data. 50 bytes is approximately what, 0.05 KB. Understood, right? How I'm doing these calculations. So I'm assuming that in 1 byte, in 1 KB, there are 1000 bytes, not 1024 bytes. And based on that, I'm calculating this. And on the reaction table, again, you can say that there will be some reactions that can be max to max 100, 100 bytes of data. So, or there can be a long comment as well. So let's say 200 bytes of data. So we can say 0.2 KB for each of the reaction. Correct. Now so we have introduced the tables. Now based on the estimation, so let's make some assumptions here. So let's start with some assumptions here. Let's do some assumptions. What are the different assumptions? How many total users you want to support? So can we say that we have 500 million total users? We'll have 100 million daily active users. Now we can have each user on an average, each daily active user, DAU, on an average will post one tweet. There can be few users who will make couple of tweets. There can be few users who will make 10 tweets. There will be few users who will not make any tweet. But we are on an average, we are saying that each DAU on an average will post one tweet. And we can say each daily active user on an average fetches their timelines 10 times in a day, or let's say 20 times in a day. Basically here 20 times doesn't mean that they're coming onto the platform 20 times. Once you send a read request, there will be some set of tweets which will be returned, right? So you'll have to fetch the next set of tweets again. So that's what I'm saying. On an average, you'll have 20 read requests for each of the daily active user. Now, how many reactions per user? Or shall we say 10 times 20 is too much? Now, on an average, each daily active user will add 10 reactions or 20 reactions in a day. Based on these assumptions, now we'll try to do a capacity estimation. So let's see how do we do the capacity estimation. We know that there are 500 million users. When we say 500 million total users, and for each of this user we have to store some data. So can we say 500 million into how much data? 2 KB of data. So can we say 2 KB plus how many tweets are we posting in a day? So we are saying around 100 million active users. There are 100 million posts per day. So 100 million into each of the posts take 1 KB of data into, can we say, because this will be happening for 365 days along the year. So that's why we are taking that. Here we are not considering the growth. If we consider the 20% of the growth, then we can say that there will be 600 million total users after a point. 600 million in a year. And we are doing the capacity estimation for next 1 year. Now this is for the tweets, this is for the user. Now coming on to the follow table. Okay, follow table we have introduced before, right? So let's write it for that first. Can we say that each user on an average follow 50 other users? Correct. So can we say that there will be, how many entries will be there? So there are 500 total users, 500 million or 600 million users. And each of them will have 50 followers. And for each of them, what data, how much data we need to store? 0.05. What you have taken, right? 0.05 KB. This is for the followers, this is for the tweets. And now we'll talk about the reaction table. So on an average, we are having 100 million tweets per day, 100 million daily active users, and each user is actually reacting 20 times. So we'll have to store all those details, all those 20 reactions into 0.1 we have taken, 0.1 KB, 0.2 KB we have taken. So 0.2 KB into, can we say that 365, this will happen for next 365 days. Now, can we approximate 360 to 400? So let's see this. This is 600 million into 2 kb. Now, million is basically 10 to the power 6. So kb will become what? This will become GB, sorry, MB and GB with the million because of million. And then there are 2 zeros, and this is 6 into 2, 12. So can we say 1.2 TB plus how much this is? So 0.05. So we'll divide it by 100. So this is gone. These zeros are gone. Now we have 50 into 6 into 5 KB. So this KB will become what? MB GB. Now 50 into 6 is what? 5 into 5 is 25 into 6 is 150. So 150, and then there is another zero here, right? So 1500 GB we are seeing. 1500 GB, which is equal to 1.5 TB. Plus, like, let's do this again. So this is 0.05. So divided by 100. So these two zeros are gone because of that. 50 into 5 into 6 is remaining. So 50 into 5 is 250. Into 6 is 1500. So 1500 M KB. So M will be GB, MB GB, and 1500 is there, right? So divided by 3 zeros, that will become TB. So 1.5 TB. Coming on to the tweets. So this is what, can I approximate this to 400? So I'm approximating this to 400. So can I say this will become what? KB, MB, GB because of the million. This is GB. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, right? Because this is 400. That will become what? 40 TB of data. So this will be 40 TB of data for tweets. And plus, this is 0.2, right? So 1 0 is gone. So this 0 is gone. So this is 2 into 2, 4. So 400 into 400. So can we say 400 into 400? I'm missing something here. This is 100 million into 1 KB into 365. This is correct. So this is 0.2 divided by 0. So this will be 20. So 2 into 2, 4 into 100, 400 into this 400. This will become 400 into 400. Million is what? This will become million, and this KB is KB, and this will be MB GB. 400 into 400 GB. This will be what? So, sorry, into GB. Sorry, I don't need to write it here. This is 400 into 400 GB, which will become what? 16,000. 160000. There are 2 zeros here, 2 zeros here. These 2 zeros because of this, and these 2 zeros because of this. So 40 into 4 into 4, 16. So this will remove 3 of this. So this will become TB. This will become what? Approximately, can I say around 200 TB of data will require. Next one. Considering there might be some scale up, we'll plan for around 250 TB of data in next one. Is this clear to everyone? Are there any questions, confusion here? So you'll have to practice this on your own. So try and practice this. And if you have any confusion, then let me know. We can discuss it again. And anyways, we'll do it in multiple design questions. So you don't need to worry if not everything is clear, but please do and take a look at this. Correct. Now we have to do the QPS estimation. So to do the QPS estimation, first we need to figure out all the APIs. So let's start figuring out all the APIs which we'll need here. First, we have figured out all the tables. Now we have to figure out all the APIs for this particular system. Can you tell me what are the different APIs which we'll need? Let's start with the. So the first one is login API and the registration API. So can you start with login API? So registration API. So we'll have register user. Register user. There will be parameters passed related to user details, user info. All these information will be passed, username, password, and bunch of other details will be passed as a part of the register user. Then can we say login user? In the login user, what all details will pass? You'll pass username, password. And this will return you the user ID or the account ID or the user ID, whatever you want to call it. Okay, sorry, the tokens. So this will return you the tokens. These are the authentic, I mean, these are the tokens which will be passed as a part of every single request from now. Then what is another one? Post tweet. This is another API. In this, you will pass the tweet info. Then you'll have generate feeds or fetch feeds for the user. So you'll pass like the tokens and the tweet tokens here. Every time you will pass the tokens now, right? So you'll pass the tokens here, and based on the tokens, you'll get the user ID, and for that you will get the feed. Correct? Then fetch feed or get feed, we can say, or generate feed, get feed. Correct, for a particular user. And after that, we'll have react on tweet. On this, again, you'll pass the tokens so that we know which user is actually reacting. And then we'll pass the tweet ID. And we'll pass the reaction type. And if it's a comment, we'll pass the comment text as well. Otherwise, this will be empty. Correct. So these are the different APIs which you'll need. Then there will be follow user as well. So follow user. So we'll pass the tokens. This will let us know who is the user ID to be followed, or I can say followee ID. Correct. Unfollow user can be another API. So you can have enum here saying that follow type, basically follow or unfollow. These are the different APIs which we'll need for our this design. Now let's see how many QPS. So we have register user. So can we say that each user, there will be 100 million daily active users? So on an average, can we say that there will be 10K users signing up on a daily basis? Oh, we were assuming 100 million growth per user per year, right? So 100 million divided by 400 if we do, that means that we'll have 100 million growth per year, we are saying, right? So 100 divided by...
Sorry, Professor. 20% we kept it, right? From our initial figure, we kept 20% per year user growth. So we'll keep that count for our register user API, right?
No, but whenever we do the API estimations, we are talking on a day.
Oh, okay.
On a day, how many times we'll call this API?
Right.
We said that there are 100 million daily, 100 million growth in 1 year. Right. So divided by 400, so on a daily basis, 100 will go. So that will be 1 million divided by 4. So can we say that 1 million divided by 4 is what, 250? Right. So 250,000 new users are registering on a daily basis. Correct. Now for login, not all the users will log in every day, right? Some will keep their login already open. So 100 million daily active users were there. So can we say that 10 million active users are actually signing up on a daily basis, logging? So we are saying that 10% of them will actually log in. 90% of them will always remain logged in. This will be per day. Post tweets, on an average, one user is posting 1 tweet. So 100 million posts will be there. There will be get feed. So there will be 10 times you are doing the get feed. So that will be 1,000 million requests sent for this. React on tweet, can we say that on a daily basis, 20 reactions are there. There are 100 million daily active. So 20,000 reactions. Million requests for the reactions. Follow user, can we say that there are each user, how many followers? So each user is following 150 users on an average, right? 50 other users, correct? And 500 users are there. So 500 users into 50. So 25, can you say 25,000 million divided by 400? Let's assume some number. Let's say that on an average, each user will follow one other user. So there are 100 million requests to follow the user. Correct? On a daily basis. Or we can say that 50 million requests to follow other users. Or we can say 100 million. Actually, one user can on an average is following another user. 100 million followers. Now, based on these numbers, we'll have to do the QPS estimation. So let's go to the QPS estimation. So there are two types of QPS generally we talk about. There is a read QPS and then there is a write QPS. So we'll start with the read QPS. So what is the read API? Read QPS. There's only one read API in this, right? The only one read API is get feeds. Rest all are write APIs only. Login, registration, all these are write API. Like login, you can consider login is a read API as well if you are not writing the last logged in. I leave it up to you, but let's consider that these are the two read APIs. So how many requests are there coming for React on, sorry, get feeds 1000 million, right? Because 100 million into 10, 1000 million, or this should be 2000 million. So 1000 million requests for read, and then there are 10 million requests for login. So we can ignore 10 million in front of 1000 million. So there are 1000 million requests for read. So 1000 million requests is for feed plus 10 million for login. So we can say that there are around 1010 requests, 1010 million requests per day. Now, we need to convert this into QPS is for query per second, right? So 1010 million requests per day divided by 86400. So we can approximate this 86400 to 10 to the power 5. So this will become 1010 million. This is 10 to the power 6, correct? So 10 to the power 6 divided by 10 to the power 5 is what? Into 10. Can we say that there are around 10,000 QPS for read? This is my read QPS. Not talking about the write QPS. For write QPS, what do you see? So we have how many 250 users, 250K users per day. This is for registration. Plus, there are 100 million requests for tweets. This is for tweets. Plus, there are some reactions as well, right? So 2000 million for reaction. And then there are 100 million for follow users. So I'm ignoring everything because only 2000 million is the one which is contributing a lot. So can we say that there are 2000 million requests per day? I'm approximating this to 1010 only. It will be easier to see and understand. Because there were 2000 million requests per day. Here there were 1000 million. So can we say that this is approximately equal to what? 20,000 QPS per day. So this is for read, this is for write. This is the write QPS. Now looking at this, so generally you have a multiplier factor of 1.5 there because there can be a peak load at some other time. So we can say that approximately we have to handle 15,000 reads per second. And we have to handle 20,000 writes per second. These are the reads and writes which we have figured out based on our estimations. Any questions here, any one of you? My read QPS, this is my write QPS. Okay. And these are the tables which you have created as a part of this.
I have a question.
We'll do a multiplication factor of 1.5 here as well, right? So this will become 30,000 QPS, right? Now, looking at this, it might look like a write-heavy system, but is it a write-heavy system? It's a read-heavy system, right? It's not a write-heavy system. Why it seems like a write-heavy system? Because reactions, we are not considering the bandwidth. When we actually read a particular feed, you will actually read hundreds of tweets there. So if you simply multiply it by 100, you can clearly see what difference it will make. Whenever we are reacting to something, we are actually reacting only to one tweet. In one feeds, we will be reading 50 or 100 feeds. So although by QPS estimation, it seems like it's a write-heavy system, but it's actually a read-heavy system because in one particular read, you're reading a lot of data. But when you're writing the data, you're writing a very limited set of data. I'll stop here. and I'll take questions if there are one. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next part.
Question about the QPS calculation. So don't we have to do the QPS calculation for each API separately?
Okay. So this is about my, if there are no questions, let's move on to the next part. So now we will talk about, so we are done with the APIs estimations, the QPS estimations. We are done with the QPS, we are done with the capacity estimations, we are done with detailed design, where we are not done with the detailed design, but we are talking about the tables and the APIs. Correct?
Hello, Agrawal, can you hear me?
I hope I'm audible to everyone. Hey, can you hear me? Can all of you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear any one of you.
Can you hear me, Prakar?
Can you put your questions on the chat? You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, no, okay, great. At least you can hear me. I'm not sure why you people are not audible. Let me check. Hello. Don't you have to calculate the QPS separately for each API? I mean, in a way, you're calculating it for a separate API only, right? You can do that, but it's a lot of hassle. Generally, you try to do it for all the APIs together. It depends on the interview. You can check with your interviewer. I prefer, because other QPS can be ignored easily. So because that 1,000 million and 10 million, you can easily say that because it's 10 million, it will be 100 QPS. It's 1,000 million. So 1 million divided by 10 to the power 5, that will be 10. So it's always, if it's you have 1 million requests, then it will 1 million requests in a day, then it will be 10 requests per second. So if you want, you can do it for each of the API as well, if it is really, really required. But generally, I would suggest you do it for the system and not for each of the API. Depends on interviewer to interviewer. Correct. But you can calculate the QPS for the overall system as well. And you can mention, you already mentioned, right, for each API, what is the estimation, like how many requests are we getting per second. So based on that, you can easily calculate for each of the requests as well. It won't take a lot of time. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, so quick guide is basically, see, whenever it's million, right? Let's say you have KB. So KB to MB to GB is always 10 to the power 6, because you have 10 to the power 3 in 1 KB, 1 MB equal to 10 to the power 3 KB, 1 GB is equal to 10 to the power 3 MB. These are approx numbers. 1024 are the exact bytes, but that's okay. So KB to MB to GB will be 10 to the power 6. So we whenever we write the table, you put it in form of KBs, like you do find out in bytes, in the KBs, kilobytes. Now million will be there, so you will easily go to MB GB. Once you're on the GB, you have to do just the calculations, and you will figure out like GB to TB is 10 to the power 3, so you try to reduce those zeros. Correct? So this is for the capacity. For 365 days, you always approximate it to 400 for the simplicity purpose. So that is another thing which you need to keep in mind when you're doing the capacity estimation. For the QPS estimation, if you know how many million requests you're getting, just remove the million and multiply it by 10. That will be the number of requests per second you will get. So these are the simple estimations. I can put it in the doc. So we can say 1 KB to 1 million. I'll write it about the estimations. So you can say that 1 MB 1 GB equal to 10 to the power 6 KB. You always figure out the entry for each row in the table in KBs. These are the general recommendation. And then for number of days in a year, in a year. Approx these to 400. And then the next thing is if you have 1,000 million requests, 1 million requests per day equal to 10 requests. 1 million requests per day is equal to 10 requests per second. These are some of the standard rules with the help of which you can quickly do the calculations. Okay, so we have talked about what do you mean by please write the estimation calculation formula description before the actual numbers calculation in the calculator. What formula? I didn't get you. I'm not using any formula here. Sudhakar, can you explain me what do you mean? I think you.
Are you able to hear me, Prakhar?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you now. Tell me.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, see, here you have written 600 million into 2 KB, right? So before that, if you could write like how, like what is that 600 million and 2 KB? So kind of a formula description or like how we came up with this, right? So that would really help.
It's easier always, right? It's always used. I mean, these are the total number of users. I can write it total users. It's all, I mean, you can figure it out. It's not very difficult. Total users into bytes per user. This is what.
Prakhar, so just wanted to understand if this bytes is in the UTF or ASCII format. So is that also changes with this one? So
it changes a bit, but you don't need to worry a lot about it. See, you can always see you can do that. Will introduce. I mean, into 2 or 3 you'll have to do. That's it. You're doing the approximations here, so it doesn't matter a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, I wanted to have some clarification on when you said that now the table which we are having, like each table or each user will have will occupy 2 KBs. So just wanted to get into the depth of that, how we are actually doing that 2 KBs.
These are like 4 bytes. Okay. The image URL will take a lot of space, right? Like around 1,000 bytes or 1,500 bytes. So that's why this is a big table of 2 KB. Understood?
Okay,
these are all 4. These are 4 bytes.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, this is also like 4 bytes, but I'm keeping some 50 KB bytes because let's say if we introduce some other column here. This is like 4 bytes, user ID is 4 bytes, tweet content can be around 15 or let's say 500 bytes. There is some location, there is some creation. So I'm approximating this to 1,000 bytes. This is around what? This 20.2 KB, which is what 200 bytes. So reaction ID, tweet ID, user ID, reaction type. We have comment text. So because we have a text, it can be around 100 bytes to 200 bytes. Right? It can be a long. We can allow comments up to 100 bytes or something, 100 characters. That's why I've taken 200 bytes. These are all approx. I've not done any. Like, did you understand now?
Yeah, absolutely. Got it now. Yeah.
Okay.
Just wanted to understand the depth on that.
Yeah. So this will be what total followers. This is 600 million followers, 600 million total users into each followers for each into bytes in that table. This is what tweets per day into size into number of days in year. And this is what daily active into reaction per active into size into days. Okay, I hope it is clear now. Sudhakar, are you?
Yes, Prakhar, it's clear now.
Okay. So we are done with the APIs. Now after the APIs, what is the next important? Sorry.
I have a question. So earlier I asked about making those calculations for each API, QPS calculations for each API, right? So the reason I asked that question is there are certain APIs which have more QPS compared to others, right? So if we were to get the individual QPS numbers for all those APIs, then we can make a resources allocation better for the ones which have the higher QPS, right?
You can do that. There is no harm in that. Yeah. Generally, you do a service layer. I'll come on to that. Like, we won't be able to cover up everything in today's session. And tomorrow also we'll continue with the Twitter design. I'll come on to that. Give me some time for that. We'll talk about it. But you don't need to, I mean, you can do, I told you, right? If you want to do it, you can do it for the individual API as well. There is no, I mean, it's very similar, right? It's just, you don't need to know just how many million requests you're getting per, per day. And then based on that, you can calculate. So that is something which depends on person to person and the way you're designing. I generally prefer to talk about the read QPS and write QPS, but it can vary from person to person. You can do it on the basis of you can do it you can do it per API as well. There is no harm in that as well.
Okay, and another question is about the space for this indexes. So
so I'm taking some extra space, right? That will cover up for index as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you can do the approximations. You don't need to be very precise. Otherwise, you will end up wasting a lot of time, which you can't do in the interview. You have to do this everything in 45 minutes. We have not completed 50% of the design yet. Or not 50%, basically we have covered only 70% of the design. So still 30% is remaining, and we spent around 1 hour, 35 minutes. You have to squeeze this in 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour in actual design question. So you don't need to be precise, and there will be cross questions as well, right? So you need to make a choice, like what you want to talk about, what you don't want to talk about, how you want to proceed. That is something which you'll have to learn with time, and that will come with once you start practicing more and more questions. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's talk about the sharding and replication today, and we'll do the high-level design tomorrow. So let's talk about sharding quickly. How will you shard this data? We can see that first we can do multi-level sharding. The first layer can be always your, so we'll have a multi-level sharding. So let's talk about the users table first. So for the user table, you can hash it either based on the region first. So basically for the users, you can say that based on region. So this is by range based. So based on region, you actually shard the users. And after the based on region, you can say that this is based on region. And once you've done it based on the region, you can hash the data based on the user ID. Same thing for the follow table, because I want to know all my followers, right? So can I say that based on the region and based on, because generally I am the follower, so I need to know all my followers, right? So based on follower ID, which will be your user ID, right? You hash it on the basis of this. So we'll say range based on region and hash the data based on the user ID. There's also range based on region and hash based on follower ID. Then we have the third table is what? Tweet table. Tweet table will be always kept close to the user, right? So range, again, this will be the same key, because I need to know all the tweets of a particular user. So range based on region and hash the data based on the user ID. And same thing you will do with the reaction table as well. Now for the reaction, you don't know that reaction, we are not storing the user ID, right? But for that particular, what you can do is you can always figure out the tweet ID, and based on the tweet ID, you can figure out the user ID and keep all the reactions along with the tweet itself. So all these will be based on the user ID. Is this clear to everyone? Because we want to store all the data of a particular user, all their tweets, all the reactions you have received on the tweet, all their followers together, and that's why we are sharding it based on the region and then based on the user ID of the user. So this is my sharding strategy. Correct? Now there can be replications, or for replications you can follow a simple master slave configuration to replicate the data across multiple shards. So we can say that data can be written into the master and read from the slave. So that is my replication strategy. You can have the replications based on this. Correct. So replications is fairly simple. You are saying that replicate the data based on master slave configuration. Any questions here? So we have talked about sharding, we have talked about replication. We'll use the master slave configuration to replicate the data. Okay. So now master slave replication is done. Then we can talk about authentication, authorizations, and load balancing. So for the load balancing, we'll have to introduce the multiple layers between the web servers, application servers, and the database server, and we'll draw the load balancer diagram tomorrow for the same design. And we'll talk about the authentication authorization tomorrow. And also we will talk about the caching if you want to cache any data. And then we'll talk about the monitoring and alerting. So for the first 15 minutes, we'll talk about the Twitter design itself. We'll talk about the different changes or different, not the changes, sorry, different, different subheadings which have been not covered as a part of the detailed design. We'll cover those in detail. And we'll also cover the monitoring and alerting part. So I would request everyone to go and think about authentication authorization for this. What data you will cache and how you will cache this data. Then basically we'll talk about the high level design, how the high level design diagram is looking, and the load balancers and the monitoring and alerting part. So go and think about it. Let's discuss this tomorrow in detail. Also, as a part of the homework before the next session, I would request everyone, because you have done the Twitter design, we can say that Instagram design will be more or less same. You might have to introduce the media as a part of the let's not introduce videos, let's only introduce the images as a part of the Instagram design. Try to work on the Instagram design as a part of your homework, as a part of the homework. Don't take reels or don't take the stories into consideration. Keep it very simple to start with, where there is an Instagram. Someone can post an image on the Instagram along with some text, and then there can be reactions on the top of it. You can have comments and likes. So that's all we have to design as a part of the Instagram design. And we'll have the generate feeds as well. You'll have post, add post. You'll have, login user, register user. You'll have in the post, you will always have an image in case of Instagram design. So that is, you don't need to complete it by tomorrow, but that's a homework for you and has to be done by the next session, which you'll have on the next Saturday. Okay. So we'll close the session for today. It's a humble request to everyone. Please join on time. Let's try to start at 8:20 tomorrow so that we can cover a significant chunk. Tomorrow we'll complete the Twitter design and we'll start with the new design, which is again a very important design from the learning perspective, because we'll try to introduce some of the important concepts tomorrow of the queues, how the queue receivers are handled. We'll start with the Google Calendar design tomorrow. So it's a request to everyone to join on time. Okay. And if you have any questions, I can try to take those questions in the first 5 minutes in tomorrow's session. We'll end the session for today.
I have one last question before we wrap up. So
yeah,
for this one, what kind of database is preferred, SQL or NoSQL?
So generally, see here, the data is well structured. So we'll prefer a SQL database. If you want, you can introduce a NoSQL, but I see NoSQL is an overkill for this particular of our design. So I would prefer to go ahead with the SQL database in this case.
Okay. So by well structured, you mean that the
fields are very well defined, right? The fields are very well defined. You have to store the data together. There is no document required here. See, generally, if you'll see in most of my designs, you'll see I'll end up using the SQL databases, because in general, that's what I have observed. Like most of the teams end up using the SQL database whenever they see that the data is structured. They can introduce the columns. They know what are the columns. You would try to have the ACID properties, because you have to have the transactions in these tables. So it's always, I mean, you will see in most of my designs, you will see I'm using the SQL database. But I'll tell you, in some of the designs, you can use the NoSQL DB as well. I'll tell you where to use the NoSQL DB. see, it's very hard to decide whether it's a SQL or NoSQL unless there is a very hard requirement to use a NoSQL. I will generally prefer to use SQL, and I'll share a blog with you, all of you today in the chat, and you can go through that blog. There's a company called Pinterest, if you've heard of it. They actually started with NoSQL and they shifted to SQL just because they were facing a lot of issues when it comes to scalability. And it was much more easier for them to scale when it came to NoSQL databases. Sorry, SQL databases. So I know that, we always have that in the top of our mind that, you will use the NoSQL DB, will use the NoSQL DB. But in most of the cases, generally you end up using the SQL databases as well, because the transaction properties ACID properties benefit which you get as a part of the SQL DB. And if you observe, in most of you might be using SQL databases only in your actual day-to-day work as well. There will be very few people who are using the NoSQL DB. NoSQL DB is used when you have to do like a lot of data analysis. There is a lot of data which has been coming and flowing, and you don't know how to use that data in a well-structured manner. You have to write some Spark, or you have to do some, you have to write some queries on the top of it to do some analysis. In those cases, you'll use NoSQL. There will be a couple of designs in which we'll see how to use the NoSQL databases, and we'll use the NoSQL databases. For this particular design, I would prefer a SQL DB over the NoSQL DB.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
That answered the question. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then let's meet tomorrow again at the same time at 8:50, and please be on time. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a nice day. I'll end the meeting for now.
Thank you.